Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 24, The Spring Festival. It was without a doubt the worst day of the year for Lith. He would be forced to spend the full afternoon away from home, surrounded by complete strangers and robbed of any privacy or personal space during the festivities. All the families in the village would gather for the festival, forgetting about all their daily problems and miseries, since everything from decorations to food and drinks were paid by Count Lark. He would also take part in the whole event, to keep his bonds with the community strong and maintain his reputation of a fair lord, instead of being just a faceless guy who collected taxes, making their lives even harder. The festival was comprised of 3 parts. The morning would still be spent like a normal day's work, to let foreigner merchants and carnies prepare their stands and arrange their merchandise. In the evening the families would gather and check out the stands, searching for trinkets and jewelry to buy with their extra money to add them to their daughter's dowry. The food would mainly consist of appetizers, like fresh fruit and vegetables, with skewers of different kinds of meat and even exotic food, brought by Count Lark for the occasion, like saltwater fishes and seafood. The only drinks available would be water and light beer. After the sunset, huge braziers and torches would be lit all around the village, while the Count's workers would prepare the stage for the festival main event, the election of the Spring Maiden. All the girls 15 and 16 years old could take part in the Spring Maiden contest, which was more like a debutante ball rather than a beauty pageant. It was the opportunity for all the young maidens of marriageable age to show off their beauty and virtues, in hope to catch the attention of as many suitors as possible. The judges of the Spring Maiden contest were always the same, Count Lark, the village chief and Nana. After the election, the real food would be brought out, with lots of roasted animals, soups, and caramelized fruits. Both pure and watered wines would be available, raising the spirits for the finale. The last part consisted of a ball, encouraging the eligible bachelors to approach one or more maidens that may have caught their eye. Each part would affect Litha's mood differently. The first would cause extreme boredom, tempered by the fact that he was still allowed of moving alone. The second was akin to torture. He would be forced to sit on his father's shoulders, staring for hours at a bunch of little girls he did not give a damn about. The third was the best one, but only because it was very short. After some dancing, his parents were too tired to remain any longer, and would finally bring him back home. None of their children was yet of marrying age, so they had no reason to linger. For the first time in his new life, Lith had some money in his pocket, so he could check out the carnival games that offered the best prizes. They cheat, I cheat. Let's play this fair and square. Using spirit magic he won a beautiful stuffed bear for Tista, beating a ring toss game rigged by unbalanced rings. From a crossbow shoot game he got a silver-coated hair comb for Rena. All he needed to do was to use 2 strands of spirit magic, one to guide the dart to his target, the second to force it to crumble. Last, but not least, a silk ribbon for his mother from a Wheel of Fortune stand. The carnies were flabbergasted, but trying to bully a local child in front of so many villagers, not to mention Count Lark, would have earned them nothing more than the beating of a lifetime and a permanent ban from every event in the county of Lustria. They started to keep an eye on him, but Lith was not greedy and left after getting the 3 prizes. He actually wanted something for Raz too, but all they had were feminine products. The carnies hoped to lure the young boys into wasting their money, trying to impress the girls with expensive presents they could not afford without gambling. After distributing the presents, Lith searched for Nana. He wanted to have a chat about magic with an expert. He found her sitting on a bench near her house. The first thing he did was looking at her with life vision. Her mana flow was way bigger than Litha's, but her life force was weaker than Tista's. Nana was a over 60 years old woman, but she looked like an 80-year-old earth woman. Her back was so hunched that she needed a cane to walk properly. She had sharp gray eyes, a face full of wrinkles and a big aquiline nose. Nana always wore a shawl over her head, to avoid her long gray hair bothering her during work. At a first look she seemed an inconspicuous old lady, but when you got near, you could feel the raw strength exuding from her body. Must have had a rough life. Solus commented. Hello, Nana. How are you? Lith asked politely. Hello to you, little imp. You sure are growing fast, aren't you? Just like Alina had noticed back in winter, Tista and Lith were growing taller and slender than their peers. The same was happening to Rena too, after she had received Litha's treatment. Lith was already over 1.1 meters, 1.8 high, his shoulders broad like he played water polo. Lith nodded. Yes, I do. Can I ask you a question? As long it's not about my age, be my guest. Nana laughed. Nana, are you a strong magician? Nana was surprised, the question not very childlike. Yes, I am. When I was still a young girl, I even got a scholarship for the prestigious Lightning Griffin Academy, and I managed to graduate without any problem. Nana straightened up proudly, remembering her years of glory. Then how did you end up being a healer in Lucia? How tactful of you, Lith. Solus rebuked him. Children are allowed to be rude. It's one of their few privileges. Nana's mood turned gloomy. You see, Lith, in this world there are commoners, nobles, and mages. A strong mage has a status on par with the nobles, depending on his/her magic power. Back then I was very strong, but not a genius. Sadly, I was also stupid and naive, so I made some very bad choices and ended up alone, without anyone backing me. I had only two options left. Either submit to a powerful noble or living free with the status of a healer. Guess what I picked? Lith became gloomy too, the idea of losing everything after working so hard for it made his future look even scarier. There, kid. Nana brightened up. Let's not spoil the mood and enjoy the festival. After leaving Nana alone, Lith thought back at her words about his growth, and stopped in front of a mirror on display, watching his reflection. He could only sigh in resignation. No matter how many impurities I expel, I managed to fail even at the gene pool lottery. I took so much from my dad and so little from my mom. When I look at myself while brooding, rather than cool I like some kind of psycho kid escaped from juvie. If I smile, now that I miss so many teeth, I'm not even cute. Even all dressed up, I could barely pass for a street urchin from one of Dickens' novels. Solus tried to brighten him up, but to no avail. Later in the evening, Count Lark introduced to the village elders his guest of honor. Chief Urok, Sage Nana, allow me to introduce you the young Ricker Trahan, son of my dear friend, Baronet Loker Trahan. This young lad is a really talented magician, that in the future will bring glory to our county. Count Lark was a magic enthusiast, always trying to sponsor promising youths from his land. Nice to meet you, young man. The village chief saluted him with a polite bow, expecting the other to offer him his hand or at least reply to the bow. Ricker instead kept looking around, his eyes filled with contempt. The pleasure is mine. He replied with a cold tone. Ricker, where are your manners? Count Lark rebuked him mildly. Sage Nana was a powerful and renowned magician in her youth. Feel free to ask her for advice. Her experience could prove invaluable to overcome any difficulty you may encounter during your studies. I have no doubt about that, my lord. Ricker bowed this time, but to Count Lark. Nana had seen enough nobles in her life to recognize the type. A high and mighty young master, pampered enough to believe that only nobles could achieve greatness. The people of the village were having a hard time tolerating so much disrespect towards their elders, but for the Count's sake they limited themselves to angry whispers. Oh, oh, oh. You got yourself another spunky one, dear Lark. Nana laughed without any warmth. Ricker shuddered at such lack of respect, the old bat calling the Count by his first name without honorifics. But he knew that Lark was a sucker for magicians, and judging from her attitude, he had granted the old bat the right to do so. He has every right to be proud, dear Nana. Next year he will turn 12 and apply for a Lighting Griffin's Academy scholarship, and with a little luck he will enroll just like you did back in the day. Ricker failed to repress his amazement, knitting his eyebrows at Nana. By the gods, how could such a commoner get admitted into the academy? He thought. She must have cheated her way in, no doubt. Really? Replied Nana with exaggerated enthusiasm. Why don't you ask him to show us what he is capable of? Count Lark gladly accepted, and per his request soon was set up a 1 meter, 3 high stump with a head of lettuce on its top. Ricker had to stay at least 10 meters, 11 yards, away from it and knock it down. It was a very basic exercise for anyone who wanted to become a magician, often used to quickly get rid of unworthy candidates. Only those with real talent for magic were able to use chore magic at such range. For normal people, magic had a range of a meter or two. To learn something outside chore magic, one had to either enroll in a magic academy or buy very expensive books. Young man, do your best. Count Lark's voice was full of enthusiasm. Ricker had done that exercise countless times, but always alone. This time he was surrounded by commoners, clearly hoping to watch him fail and get the chance to ridicule him. Even worst, Count Lark was putting a lot of pressure on him. In Ricker's eyes this wasn't a simple test, but a matter of life and death. Feeling countless eyes on him, he lost his concentration while performing the hand signs and stuttered the magic word. Ianfiro. He produced a chestnut-big fireball, that almost missed the lettuce. Yet with a small boom the head of lettuce got knocked off. No one applauded except for Count Lark. More than one "that's it" could be heard among the crowd. Nana walked slowly to the vegetable, bringing it back for the Count to examine. He messed a few key hand signs, stuttered the magic word, and missed the lettuce entirely. It only got knocked off because of the explosion. Nana remarked coldly. I would not keep my hopes up, Lark. When I was his age, I was able to actually hit my target without performing signs nor using magic words. They admitted me only because of my perfect silent magic. Nana's gray eyes were staring at Ricker in contempt. Well, he is still young, that's why I brought him to you. He has another full year to prepare for the exam. There is still time to fix the small mistakes. I was hoping you could mentor him. I would be glad to, I really would. But between the villagers and my disciple, I already have my hands full. I'm too old to take care of 2 youths, and my apprentice takes precedence. As you know, a magician's word is her bond. You have an apprentice. Count Lark was shocked no one had informed him about such critical matter. Yes. She nodded, smiling in Ricker's face. He learned to read and write at the age of 3, and by that time he had already learned chore magic all by himself. Marvelous. Count Lark's excitement was a slap in Ricker's face. Yeah, he is also my disciple. Celia stepped forward, adding fuel to the fire. She and Nana politely detested each other, but between her and a stuck-up obnoxious brat, she would always choose the devil she knew. He hunts in the Tron woods from the age of 4. Even if he can only hunt blinkers and critters, he would never miss a moving target, let alone some deadweight lettuce. She then whispered to the Count's ear, he is actually the you-know-who that provided the you-know-what. Fantastic. Excellent. When can I meet him? His monocle jumped out of his eye orbit from the happiness. Ricker was on the verge of exploding out of anger. Can't he see they are just leading him by the nose? How can someone with such a high social status like the Count trust even one word from these commoners? Lying and cheating is in their nature. They are just trash, trying to stoop us at their level to make themselves feel better about their pathetic lives. If that old bat is a magician, then I am the crowned prince. Why do I have to bear with all her nonsense? And how come even a gut-stinking hunter can freely speak to a count? This evening could not turn any worse. How the heck I managed to let my father convince me to come to this pigsty? Here he is. Broman shouted triumphantly, forcefully dragging Lith by his arm. He had no idea what was happening. Lith was with his family, nibbling at a caramelized apple, when Broman appeared out of the blue, babbling about the village honor or something. Too many eyes were on him. Lith's intuition told him that something was wrong, so he decided to play it close to the vest. Count Lark, I'm honored to meet you. It didn't take a genius to understand that the overdressed beanpole with the monocle had to be the lord of the land. Lith greeted him cupping his fist, performing a deep bow. He then proceeded greeting the village chief, Nana, and Celia, making his bow deep according to the respect they deserved. Lastly, he turned towards the ill-looking kid standing next to the count. He had to be around 10 years old, 1.4 meters, 4 feet 8 inches, high. He was wearing a silk white shirt over high-end leather pants. His face was all red and sweaty, like he had either run for his life or been bitten by a venomous snake. The situation made no sense to Lith, but since no one seemed worried about the kid's health, Lith did what he was supposed to. Greetings, honorable guest. I hope you enjoy your visit in our village. Lith cupped his fist again, making only a small bow. He had no idea who that kid was, and Ricker could not find the strength to introduce by himself. The count seemed to have completely forgot about his existence. Oh. Nana laughed. See, Lark. Manners. That's something so many youngsters lack nowadays. Lith kept looking around, waiting for someone to explain what was happening. Can I be of assistance? He asked. Ricker once again needed all his willpower to prevent himself from throwing a fit of rage. This is their prodigy? A toothless bum? I should ask the count to whip them all to death for their blatant lies. Simply outrageous. Yes, Lith. Celia stepped in again. Count Lark loves magic in all its kinds and forms, and I was just telling him about how you kill blinkers without ruining even a feather. Would you mind to show him? She took out a wooden stick, holding it up for the count and everyone else to see. Lith sighed with relief. All this fuss for chore magic? They almost gave me a heart attack. If it's just to entertain some bored nobles, why not? If the village thrives, so will my family. Breza. After twirling twice his middle and medium finger, a small vortex enveloped the stick. Outwardly it was just like the ones every housewife used daily to clean their houses, but looking at it closely one could notice that it was actually two different vortexes, one spinning clockwise and the other counterclockwise. This way the spell applied a huge strain to the stick in the point where the two vortexes connected, causing it to break almost instantly. Lith had invented it after Celia had started bothering him too much about how he killed the blinkers. He could not show her spirit magic, so he came up with this trick. Ricker wanted to rebut, saying that Lith was standing barely a meter, 1.1 yards, away from the stick, but even he knew how hard it was to use two different spells at the same time. He also knew that such an objection would be met by the old bat requesting him to do the same. And he had no idea how to. Nana waved her hand, and a villager put another head of lettuce on the stump. Lith, be a dear and knock that out, please. Lith was getting more and more confused. The count now had stars in his eyes, looking at him like some mythical beast had descended from the heavens, while the noble kid was as pale as a ghost. What the heck is going on here? Why the count is so engrossed by cheap magic? And why no one cares about that poor kid? Whatever he has is getting worse. Lith shrugged before flickering his middle finger while saying, Jorun. An ice dart hit the lettuce dead center, making it roll a few meters away. Without using hand signs. The count gasped, his voice so faint that Lith could not hear him. One last thing, dear Lith. If you manage to indulge this poor old lady, I will treat you and all your family for free until you start your apprenticeship. Are you willing to humor me one last time? Lith had no need to think before accepting. Despite his best efforts, Tista still needed constant care. From time to time they had still to seek for Nana's help, and it wasn't cheap. Nana smiled, full of confidence enough for the both of them. Broman, toss one of those as high as you can. Broman threw a head of lettuce with a lob shot, sending it about 3 meters, 10, high. When it reached its peak, Nana made a simple gesture, cutting the air horizontally with her extended hand and fingers, conjuring 10 ice darts. 5 struck its left side, 5 the right side. When the head of lettuce started falling, Nana cut the air again, this time vertically, splitting it evenly in 4 parts. Then she simply opened her palm toward the sky, conjuring 4 small vortexes that brought down the 4 pieces slowly. Damn! Not only Nana's mana flow is still superior to mine, but her skill level is above and beyond my expectations. I could probably achieve the same result, but I'd need both hands and something more than just a casual wave of the hand. Now I understand why everyone in the village holds her in such high regard. She is likely to be the reason why the village of Lucia is so peaceful. If she can do so much with simple chore magic, I can't imagine what she can do with a real spell. Lith thought. Now is your turn. Broman. Another head of lettuce, another lob shot. Lith knew it wasn't a contest, he wasn't supposed to perform as good as Nana. Until Lith could get a clear picture of how much talent was considered good, how much to be considered a genius level, and how much for the burn that monster label, he had to play it safe. When the shot reached his peak, Lith made hand signs with both hands, shouting Jorun, conjuring 4 ice darts, 2 per side. When the lettuce started to fall, he used Breza to cut it unevenly in half, using it again to summon 2 vortexes to bring the pieces down. Once again, they were rotating in opposite directions, the phenomenon highlighted by the slowly spinning lettuce. In for a penny, in for a pound. They already know I can do it, if I have to entertain the count, might as well do it with a little swag. The crowd exploded into an applause, soon joined by an ecstatic Count Lark that still could not believe his own eyes. Nana sent Lith away to his parents, reassuring him that she would keep her side of the bargain, before speaking again to Ricker Trahan. And that, young man, is what real talent for magic look like. Ricker could not hear her, thought. Back when Nana had showed her skill, he had fainted standing up. His mind could not accept that all the certainties he had grew up with, had proven to be nothing more than convenient lies. Chapter 25 Ambush. After the end of the spring festival, nothing major happened, and Litha's life returned to his usual routine. Solus proved to be of invaluable help for his magical training. Despite having lost all her past knowledge and being quite naive in the ways of life, she was by far the brighter of the two. Solus was not limited to the human's 5 senses, but actually had 12. Solus was certain that by regaining her powers she would be able to awaken even more. Solus' sense of mana helped Lith to better understand the laws of magic that determined the innate talent and the mana capacity. Her mana sense was similar to Litha's life vision, but much more profound and accurate. Solus could see the mana flowing even from blades of grass or pebbles. When looking at someone, she was immediately able to grasp their magic talent. Even more important, she was able to use her mana sense even on Litha's memories. According to Solus, all the information needed for the mana sense were also contained in the visible spectrum, but the humans lacked the means to interpret them. When you were on Earth, you had no mana core. Your native world had basically no mana at all. The same thing happened on the alien spaceship. But when you were born here, you started with a very little blood-red mana core. By absorbing and processing the world energy with your breathing technique, you managed to develop it from red to orange. 4 years of unrelenting practice just to promote it to the next rank. Lith was quite depressed by the news. Not quite. Your mana core also keeps changing and developing as you grow up, and this happens to everyone else too. At the moment of your birth, Tista's monocore was already field poppy red, and turned brighter every year. Right now it's light orange, and it would not surprise me if after her final growth spurt it turned yellow, or even green. She seems to be fairly talented for magic. And that where does it leave me? Lith kept feeling worse about himself. Am I really a complete failure in everything? Looks, talent, can't I do one thing right? Stop moping around and listen to me. You keep forgetting that you are 2 years younger, and I have no idea if males and females develop their monocores at different rates. Also, your constantly skipping steps makes hard for me to understand what your base talent is. After every cycle of expansion and compression, your monocore would turn one shade brighter. Every time you expel impurities from your monocore, it skips to the next level. Right now is deep green. Is it me, or this monocore strength seems to be somehow related to the light spectrum? Lith pondered. A prism can break down white light in its basic components: red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple. Agreed. Soulless Mind nodded. But it could also somehow be related to fire. Flames follow the same principle: a yellow star is colder than green one, and so on. Our real question is the final step for a monocore to turn purple or white? Lith shook his head. I'm starting to get a head-splitting headache. We'll face this like I did for college back on Earth, one exam session at a time. Even back there, if I started to think about all the exams that I had to pass to get my degree, only to start right back for my master, I would go into a deep depression. The memory made him shudder. So let's focus on the present. I'm deep green. What about Nana? She is the only person with a light cyan monocore. To be born with such talent, she is really impressive. Is there anyone else talented in the village? Lith had to be aware of the possible competition. No. The ill kid Count Lark brought along had a bright yellow monocore, but I don't think he lives close by. Lith sighed, all that information overwhelming him. For so many years he had deluded himself into thinking he was special, stronger than anyone else. Now he felt like the proverbial frog in the well, finally discovering the vastness of the sea. Enough moping around, let's roll up our sleeves and work hard. Nothing that's worth having comes easy. Lith and Solus kept practicing together for the whole year, growing closer and closer like fraternal twins. Litha's birthday was on fall, but all major activities in the village would be suspended until the next spring. Since Nana's offer was to replace the 2 years public school with an apprenticeship, Lith too had to wait until spring to begin his magical education. In the late winter the weather cleared, and the trades between the village and the farmhouses became more and more frequent. Thanks to this, Nana was able to let Lith know the date she had set for starting his apprenticeship, entrusting the message to one of his neighbors that had come to her to heal a nasty wound suffered while repairing the roof. When the day came, Lith woke up early, determined to keep his routine of cleaning both his house and Celia's before going to the village. The huntress had done so much for him that Lith considered her as an aunt. A stingy, nagging one that would make rip-off deals, but an aunt nonetheless. That morning the house was in turmoil. All his loved ones were so excited at the idea of having a future mage in the family, to be barely able to eat their breakfast, spending all their time and energies giving him unwanted and obvious advices. Do not be late. Is better getting a little early rather than late. Be obedient and respectful. Nana is giving you a great chance. The reason why everyone was on edge was that despite they considered the first day to be of vital importance, Lith he had to go to the village alone. The house was in dire need of repairs, and with Orpal gone they needed all hands on deck to also take care of the fields and animals. Lith didn't mind it at all, it was just a 30 minutes walk that he had done countless times. Raz and Alina, though, felt like they were abandoning their child in his hour of need. Lith rushed out of his house, to escape from that barrage of worries. He had been very calm about the apprenticeship, It wasn't his first rodeo, after all. But they had managed to make him nervous like a teenager at his first date. After finishing the chores at Celia's house and collecting his usual payment, Lith restlessly looked at the sun. Damn it, it's still barely dawn. And here I was, shuddering in fear. I still have a lot of time. Lith walked briskly toward the village, hoping that at his arrival Nana would at least be already up. Arriving so early to give her the wake-up call would have been quite embarrassing. When he arrived midway, Lith noticed something odd. There was a horseman standing on the side of the road. It was already unusual finding a stranger so early in the morning, but what really alarmed him was that the man wasn't moving. Whoever he was clearly on patrol. As soon the horseman noticed Lith, he took out a silvery whistle from under his shirt, emitting a high-pitched noise. Lith kept moving forward, but slowly, ready to react at any moment. Soon the scout was joined by 4 other horsemen, and they started trotting toward Lith in an arrowhead formation. Lith stopped moving, many spells ready at hand. "Kid, are you Lith? Son of Rez and Alina?" said the horseman on point. He was a middle-aged man, with brown hair and eyes. He had perfectly trimmed mustaches, and everything from his straight-up posture to his commanding tone identified him a military of some sort. Looking carefully, all the horsemen had the same vibe, marching perfectly aligned. Yet they wore casual clothes, white shirts over leather hunting pants. Isn't a little earlier to go out without the matching leather jacket? Lith thought. Unless of course they need to avoid showing any household insignia. "Who are you, mister? My mother always tells me that I am not supposed to talk to strangers." Lith decided to stall for time, while he and Solus checked their surroundings for lookouts or possible reinforcements still in hiding. "I perceive only 5 human males, above average physical strength, deep red monocores," Solus reported. It was the same thing Lith had determined using life vision, but 4 eyes were better than 2. "I ask the questions, kid. Are you the Lith that is supposed to start his apprenticeship today?" Lith grimaced. "Whoever sent this hired muscle, knows way too much about me." "I am," Lith retorted fiercely. "And it's none of your business. I'm here to give you a friendly advice, son. Today you are feeling very ill, and it's best for you to go back home and stay in bed all day." Lith's anger started to grow and he didn't care about hiding it. "I'm feeling perfectly fine, thank you. Now scram." The 5 men lowered their hands to the weapons hanging from their belts, the reins held tight ready to the charge. "Last chance, kid. Turn back now. I know you have such a pretty house and such a beautiful mom. Not to mention 2 gorgeous sisters ripe for the taking. It would be really sad if something bad happened to them." Lith released such a powerful killing intent aura, that the horses took a step back. The hair on the horseman's neck suddenly standing up. "I wanted to play this nice and slow, but I just changed my mind." With a sweep of his right hand, 5 wind blades struck the horse's legs, making them whine in pain while collapsing on their sides. "Now you cannot retreat anymore." The man with the mustaches and his right-hand man managed to dismount with a roll, avoiding getting crushed by the falling horse. The other 3 weren't so skilled. "Kill him. Go. 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 Kneel." Lith's voice was cold, his words fell on the 2 men like boulders, making them instantly fall on their knees. Lith's spirit magic was stronger than ever, and he wasn't holding back even one bit. "What the heck? Sarge, I can't get up!" screamed the right-hand man struggling on the ground. "I never allowed you to talk or to look at me. I said kneel." Another wave, even stronger than the previous one, pushed their heads toward the ground. Despite dropping their weapons to absorb the impact with their hands, they still hit the ground so hard that they started to bleed. "Much better. Now let me dispose of the garbage before resuming our talk." Lith walked over the closest horseman, still under his horse, the leg stuck and broken, making him scream and wince in pain. With a wave of the hand, turned both their heads 180 degrees, the neck snapping like a dry log tossed into the fire. "Stay away! Stay away from me, monster!" screamed the next in line, crying in desperation. "Am I a monster? Wasn't you the one ready to burn a house full of innocents, to r*pe a barely 8 years old child?" Without waiting for his reply, Lith clenched his fist, distorting the man's head before making it implode like a walnut. "Please, please. It's not my fault. Have mercy. I was just following orders," said a blonde, handsome youth trying to free his trapped leg. "Just following orders. I could lecture you about the many atrocities that men like you did with such an excuse. But you see, I'm just the same. I'm just following orders too. Mine to be precise." A fire bolt struck both horse and rider, turning them into a pyre, screaming in agony. Lith returned to the kneeling men. They were still struggling to escape his control, their faces pale as ghosts, gritting their teeth while exerting every ounce of their strength. "I'm sorry," Lith said with a cherubic smile, while letting them raise their heads. "But my puppet master spell isn't so simple. It takes more than a touch of strength and a spoonful of wishful thinking to escape from it." The two men wanted to beg for mercy, but their mouths refused to open. It was like their teeth were fused to each other. "Now, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is that I don't need both of you. And between the pack leader and a lackey, the choice is obvious. The good news is that I allow you to speak. Any last words?" "Please, don't. I just married, I needed the prize money from my lord. My wife is expecting a child. I could not allow to lose my position." Lith emitted a cruel, joyless laugh. "We'll have to agree to disagree. You say wife, yet all I can hear is widow." Lith put his left hand on the man's head, turning it into a block of ice. It fell to the ground, shattering into countless shards of bones, skin and brain matter. The man with the mustaches started to puke uncontrollably, but his mouth was still tight shut. Some barf managed to escape from his nose, the rest he was forced to gulp it down over and over, to avoid choking. Lith raised his hand, making the man with the mustaches float in mid-air upside down, so that he could watch him straight in the eyes. "And now, you have only two choices. You can tell me what I want and die without suffering too much. Or you can keep resisting, suffering through unimaginable pain and agony before telling me what I want to know. You have free will after all." Chapter 26 Truth. At those words the man steeled his resolve, recovering the courage worthy of a soldier that had looked death in the eyes many times on the battlefield. When Lith allowed him to speak, he wasn't afraid anymore. "I am knight, my honor lies with my lord. I will never betray his trust, you filthy mongrel. Oh my, you're so helpful. Thanks to your friend there, I already knew there is a lord behind the ambush. But I thought you were just mercenaries. Are you telling me you are actual knights? Maybe his personal guard?" Realizing his mistake, the knight bit his tongue, literally, trying to die before letting anything else slip out his mouth. "Tisk, tisk. Not so fast." Lith froze him in place again, forcing the teeth away from the tongue before healing it with light magic. "You are way dumber than you look." Lith never stopped smiling, talking to him with the calm collected manner a mother would use with a small child. "I'll spell it out for you. Not even death can save you from me. I can take you apart, piece by piece, and then put you back together, like the flesh puppet you are." Lith's eyes lost any trace of humanity, his voice exuded only hatred and rage. "But if it's pain that you want, I can give you plenty." Lith clenched his fist, and suddenly the knight felt his nether regions squeezed and crushed, like into a vice. The knight's eyes filled with tears, his mouth was only able to emit gargling sounds. Lith would release the grip from time to time, giving him some rest, before twisting and turning his hand and so the knight's gonads. "Are you ready to talk?" The knight was still in so much pain he could barely understand his words. "No? Not a problem, I just wanted to test my new and improved plague arrow." After a bolt of darkness hit the knight in the chest, Lith released him from the puppet master grip, letting him sprawl on the ground. 1. Before the knight could start looking for his weapon, he found himself shivering in cold, while his teeth were rattling uncontrollably. 2. He ended curling up, hugging himself trying to find some precious warmth. 3. Suddenly the cold was gone, the knight started sweating bullets. He felt terribly hot, like when he had been forced to stay on guard for hours under the scorching summer Sunday. 4. 5. He felt suffocating, so he tore away his shirt, gasping for air. The knight's throat was so parched that he started gulping down handfuls of snow, thanking the gods for its fresh relief. 6. 7. Then it was like his blood had started flowing in reverse, all his body was coursing with pain. The whole world had become the knight's enemy. The ground hurt his skin, the snow his throat, the light his eyes. There was no safe position he could find, he could only switch from one torture to another. 8. 9. The knight's veins were full of poison, his own saliva tasted like acid. The knight started to puke uncontrollably, until nothing but bile remained inside his intestines. And 10. Ready to talk now? Lith dispelled the plague arrow using light magic. "Please, no more. No more. If you waste any more hours you'll play right into their hands." The knight was barely alive, but at least had a sliver of hope. By enduring all that torture he now had a bargain chip. "Hours?" Lith laughed. "I killed your soldiers in what, 3 minutes? Barely another minute has passed since you told me about your knighthood. Even rounding that up, it make 5 minutes at worst. What hours are you talking about?" The knight was shocked, that couldn't be right. He looked at the sun, searching for a proof to expose that cruel lie. But the sun was still raising over the horizon. Gods have mercy, how can all that pain and misery last a minute? It seemed hours long. "You really are stupid." Lith paralyzed him again. "It's a minute from the moment you tried to bit your tongue off. The plague arrow lasted barely 10 seconds. Didn't you hear me counting out loud?" It seems that the plague arrow distorted his sense of time. Solus was studying the specimen's body reaction to the new spell. His lack of mana must have allowed the dark energy to reach his brain, altering his perceptions. Lith was on cloud 9, it was all too perfect. "I'll ask you only a second time. Are you ready to talk?" The knight's mind broke down, forgetting all about his vows and his honor. All he wanted was the pain to stop. Even death seemed alluring in comparison. So, he told Lith everything. About how after being humiliated during the spring festival, Ricker Trahan had reconsidered Nana's worth. He had understood how lacking his preparation was, and had become determined on becoming her only apprentice. After taking the matter to his father, Baronet Trahan had explained to his stupid son the enormity of his mistake. Nana held a huge grudge against nobles, and since they had started off in the worst possible way, begging or bribing her would be useless. The only option available was to remove the competitor out of the picture, hoping that Nana would be willing to replace one pupil with another more reliable. The reason why they ambushed Lith was the same that prevented Baronet Trahan from coercing Nana to do his bidding. He could not afford to make her angry, otherwise the whole Trahan household would be wiped out. Despite Nana's fallen status in the Mage Association had stripped her of most of her privileges and authority, she was still a member nonetheless. In the county of Lustria she held an authority equal if not superior to that of Count Lark himself, and that meant that she was free to execute lesser nobles like them on a whim. Nana would not even need to justify herself for such an action, just explain her reasons to the association by writing a letter. A mere formality. That was why Baronet Trahan had sent his personal guard on an undercover mission. He had stressed countless times the importance of not creating a fuss. Nana should never come to suspect anything. Their orders were to make Lith drop off from his apprenticeship by intimidating and threatening him. If none of the above worked, their job was to make him disappear without leaving any trace. During the spring festival, Nana told me that powerful magicians are like nobles, but I never expected that she actually was such terrifying existence. Seems like my choice of becoming a mage has much more ramifications than I imagined. Status of a noble, even a frigging mage association. All this stuff is giving me a headache. Now, what to do with this dirtbag? It was a rhetorical question, but Solus replied anyway. Disposing of the bodies would backfire on us. If we want to make this baronet pay, we need the bodies and some proof that links him to the ambush. Lithmind nodded. My same thought exactly. Last question. Where are the leather jackets with the Trahan family crest? We left them at home. We could not allow anyone to notice us, it would mean implicating the baronet. The knight was terrified. Litha's eyes were turning black, glowing with dark energy. Wait. The whistles. We brought along the silver hunting whistles the baronet gifted us when we swore our allegiance to him. They bear his family crest too. Thanks, a deal is a deal. Lith double-tapped the knight's head with ice arrows, killing him painlessly. He then collected all the whistles from the dead bodies, taking care of erasing the traces of his spirit magic. Those twisted necks and imploded head could raise too much questions. Let's cover our traces. I simply need to cut off the former and freeze the latter. After that, Lith used air fusion to rush toward the village. Being forced to wake up Nana was now the last of his worries, he wanted revenge. Air fusion allowed him to reach a speed of 60 km per hour 37 miles per hour, so he arrived in less than 2 minutes, but once at the village's outskirts he had to cancel the spell. I can't allow anyone to see the fastest kid alive. Damn, I want those books so bad. I need to know if spirit and fusion magic are of public knowledge or still unknown. I can't risk exposing my aces in the hole unless it is a matter of life and death. Lith kept running until he could spot Nana's house on the distance, and when he saw a luxurious stagecoach right in front of her door, he pushed the pedal to the metal. Lady Neria, I beg of you, be reasonable. Consider the bigger picture. Lith could not hear from that distance, and even if he could, he was too focused closing in to pay attention. Solus had no such problems. In the last year she had not acquired new abilities, but her senses had become much keener. A farm boy has so many things to take care of. Magic is a strict mistress that demands time and resources, all things that my dear son can provide aplenty. I'm sorry, dear baronet. Nana's voice was polite but devoid of any warmth. Her hands were clutching so hard on her cane to turn white. A magician word is her bond. I'll wait for Lith all day, if necessary. And in my opinion raw talent and a sincere disposition are much more important foundations for a magician. Things that your son is clearly lacking. Or do we want to pretend that his rude words and acts during the spring festival never happened? I may be old, but my memory has yet to fail me. Ricker Trahan was pale as a ghost. So far, his father's plan didn't seem to work. They had spent the last half hour in a one-sided negotiation. If everything failed, he knew that his father would skin him alive in case he didn't manage to enroll in the Lightning Griffin Academy. Baronet Trahan had invested countless resources to give his son all the books and teachers he could afford. The idea of all that money and efforts, wasted because of Ricker's arrogant ignorance while dealing with the best magician in the county, was enough for the baronet to disown Ricker. Now let's not be so hasty, Lady Neria. It's normal making mistakes when we are young. The important is to learn from them and never repeat them. I know that Ricker has quite a temper, and I apologize for his behavior. I can assure you he is terribly sorry for what he did. Ricker had never felt so humiliated. They kept talking about him like he was not there. Also please, consider that punctuality and reliability are very important when walking the path of magic. Yet I do not see this Lith anywhere near, while my son is right here. Don't you think that maybe a farm boy cannot understand the privilege you are granting him? Life in the wilds is very hard on the youths. I honestly fear his parents had not the opportunity or the time to impart him a proper education. I can understand your position, you gave him your word and knew him for so long. But I can't stand the idea of such an opportunity wasted on someone that cannot give you the respect you deserve. Also, I can guarantee you that if you take Ricker as your disciple, I will reward you handsomely. Not to mention that in case he got admitted to the Lightning Griffin Academy, we will never forget your help and generosity. I am ready to commit as of now that if my son reaches the greatness he deserves, he will do anything in his power to clear your name. What do you say? Nana snorted. I would like to say many things, but it doesn't seem to be necessary. The reason why you don't see him is because you are looking in the wrong direction. Lith is the panting little imp right behind you. Chapter 27 Annihilation. At those words, father and son turned around just in time to see Lith rush past them, stopping only when he was already in front of Nana. Now that he was close enough, Nana could notice that Litha's body was covered in cuts and bruises. Some were quite deep, but had been already roughly treated with light magic. They were still bleeding, but Litha's life was in no danger. What in the God's name has happened to you? As far as I know, the roads to the village are safe. Nana did not miss the panic flashing in the expression of the two nobles in front of her. Lith was still bent downward, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. Was it really necessary inflicting yourself all those wounds before coming here? Solus asked, still worried about Lith. No pain, no gain. Lith responded telepathically. Coming unscathed out of a sink or swim fight, alone against 5 knights, would have been too suspicious. These wounds serve 2 purposes. First, to make Nana angry enough to do what must be done. Second, and most important, to avoid any further investigation. If there's anything this mess proved, is that too much attention is bad. The higher I get, the more dangers I will have to face. Right now, I have no backer. All that stands between my family and the baronet is Nana. I can't protect them at all the times. It was a stroke of luck that they had to target me. In the future I must be careful of not crossing the wrong people, at least until I get enough power or backing. I don't care about magic or wealth if I don't have anyone to share them with. No one will ever be taken away from me. Never. The whole conversation with Solus lasted barely for a second. Still panting and wheezing, Lith told her about the ambush. When I was coming here, 5 horsemen tried to coerce me into giving up on my magic schooling. When I refused to submit, they tried to kill me. Thank the gods I managed to kill their leader before they got too close. With him dead, their formation went in disarray and I managed to kill them before they killed me. Lith sniffled, covering his eyes with a hand, pretending to be fighting back tears. Gods, I don't know I managed to do it. It's all a blur. Nana performed skillfully a series of hand signs before saying Viniri Lokat. A warm sphere of light magic enveloped Litha's body, healing all his injuries. That's enough, Lith. I can easily imagine the rest. Nana caressed his head, trying to comfort him. You did your best to treat your wounds, before rushing here to warn me against this scum noble. She raised her cane, pointing it toward the baronet's face with an intimidating manner. Please, Lady Neria, don't rush to judgment. Enough with your fake sycophancy. Nana was bursting with rage. Do you want me to believe that all your talk about respect and punctuality and the attack on the boy's life happening today, at the same moment, is just a sheer coincidence? How stupid do you think I am? Baronet Trahan knelt down, his hands on the floor in submission. Please, Lady Neria, believe in my good faith. I know nothing about it. The kid is still scared and traumatized, maybe his memory about the assault is confused. Also, he doesn't have any proof. Don't take hasty decisions before considering all the facts. The sight of his father, kneeling to a commoner, shocked Ricker deeply. Yet he kept enough of his cool to remember what was at stake, so he kneeled too, begging for mercy. Good faith, my wrinkly *s. I have met enough nobles to understand how your kind thinks, and how cheaply you value a commoner's life. I think. Nana stopped talking. Lith was tugging her arm repeatedly. She knew he was smart enough to understand that she was fighting for him. For interrupting her like that, Lith must have had excellent reasons. He was showing her 5 silver whistles, one of which had burnt marks. Nana took one and started examining it. She barely needed a second to recognize the Trahan family crest engraved on its top. Well done, Lith. She whispered. Even in the face of danger, never let your emotions cloud your judgment. That's the way of a true magician. She was kindly smiling at him, like a grandmother proud of her grandson achievements. Then, always keeping her back at the Trahans, she quickly performed some complex hand signs before whispering Ikijaruha. Nana's eyes briefly glowed black with dark energy. Ikija was root magic word for darkness magic, like Viniri for light magic or Infiro for fire magic. She was casting a dark spell. Lith couldn't wait to see its effects. At the same time, though, the way she used the spell threw him in confusion. Why taking the trouble of performing hand signs and using words? Nana knows silent magic, I've seen her do it already. Couldn't she just do it silently in front of them? I can't believe she is using a complex spell that requires that much caution just for those weaklings. Nana turned around, poking father and son both with her cane. She has just hit them with her spell. Solus notified Lith everything had happened in an instant, without releasing even a magic spark. If it wasn't for Solus' mana sense, Lith would have missed it entirely. Enough with this charade. Do you want proof? Is this proof enough? She shoved the silver whistle in front of the baronet's face, that turned red, then white, and finally green. He had to use every ounce of self-control he had to stop himself from panic puking. Now get out of my sight. If anything ever happens to my apprentice or his family, even if one of them breaks his fingernail, it's you that will pay the price. The two of them got back on their feet, running toward the stagecoach without saying a word. Lith was both shocked and disappointed by Nana's behavior. So much for her hatred toward nobles. Who would have thought that after everything she went through, she would still be so merciful? *CK. Nana went to the bakery, to talk to the coachman that was eating some pastries while waiting for his master. Hey, kid, the man was actually in his mid-20s, around 1,77 meters, 5 feet 6 inches tall. He had blonde hair and a kind, perfectly shaven face. What's your name? Andy. He replied while nibbling at a cream puff. Andy. Nana raised an eyebrow. Gods be my witnesses, it's a really strange name. Andy shrugged. Is actually just a nickname. Better than my real name, though. Many people found Hasadiga Eboa too hard to pronounce. Nana was flabbergasted. Anyhow, what do you need me for, Lady Nana? You seem a nice man, so here is a friendly advice. Bring your master back home as fast as you can, then find yourself a new job. She winked. Andy dropped the cream puff like it was hot, deeply bowing to Nana before running to the stagecoach. Nana returned to her house, opening the door to let Lith go inside. And now what? He was barely repressing his disappointment. Do we wait for their next move? Nana laughed heartily. Their next move? They will drop dead before arriving to their pompous home. What do you think that darkness spell was for? I just wanted to avoid making a fuss in front of the whole village. Lith suddenly felt very stupid. Well played. This will teach them a lesson. He could finally sigh with relief. Far from it, Nana said with an ice-cold tone. She went into her private quarters, quickly followed by Lith. Nana's house was really similar to Litha's, but the dining room was smaller, and instead of 3 bedrooms there was just one. The other 2 rooms were occupied by a study room and an alchemic lab. She went in the study room, opening one of the desk's drawers with a key she wore around her neck. Nana then took out a wrapped cloth, revealing a silver amulet. It had a nut-big gemstone in its center, with arcane glyphs engraved all over. Lith didn't need life vision to know it was a magical item. This is a communication amulet. Every member of the Mage Association gets one. Now give me a minute to do a full report about Baronet Trahan's attempt on my disciple's life. They hate when some small-time noble messes with us. Before I put this back into the drawer, their whole bloodline will be wiped out. That will teach all those damn nobles a lesson. Lith deeply bowed to Nana, inwardly apologizing for doubting her character. Master, your disciple awaits your command. The report was indeed brief. Once activated, the amulet generated a small 3D hologram of a middle-aged bald man, sitting behind a clean and orderly desk. All Nana had to do was to introduce her disciple, say the name of the noble, and the mage on the other side had already started giving instructions. Nana gave nonetheless a short description of the facts, showing the silver whistles as proof. Lith could see from the man's expression that he could not care less about such minor details. He still took note of everything, even somehow scanning the whistles through the amulet. After everything was said and done, Nana gave Lith his first assignments. Start by reading the basics of magic. Is the book you tried to borrow 3 years ago? Lith nodded. Read it carefully. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. In case there is a client, wait for me to finish. If there's no emergency, I'll answer you, otherwise you will have to wait. You can use my study. When you have finished with the basics, I'll give you your first Tier 1 magic book. Lith ran back in the waiting room, fetching his prize. After sitting behind the desk, with the thick book in front of him, he could not avoid thinking back at all those years spent cramming during college. He was back being a student, a familiar and reassuring feeling. Lith pushed emotionalism aside, and opened the book, reading it from the author's foreword. My name is Locra Silverwing. I am known as the wisest sorceress of the Griffin Kingdom, and also the only one of my generation to achieve the title of Magus. What the heck is a Magus? Isn't it just a synonym for mage? Lith paused for a second, taking the mental note to ask about the magician's hierarchy. I want to dedicate this book to all my female readers, in hope that they can make good use of it and unleash their superior potential. In a world scourged by wars waged by men, it's of the utmost importance for us women to keep our leading position in the magical field. Let our calm minds soothe the savage fury that dwells in their hearts. What the actual F***ck? Lith cursed, jumping off the chair. He ran straight to Nana, the book still in hand, in dire need of explanations. Sorry to be the one to break it to you, but it's the truth. Nana chuckled. Like men are stronger physically, women are more apt towards magic. It's the nature of things. See chapter 12 for more details. F*** came me sideways. Lith inwardly screamed, amongst soulless giggles. Does this mean that I start right on the back foot? Was what he actually said. Yes, little imp. Be it the Griffin Kingdom, the Gorgon's Empire or the Blood Sand Desert tribes, usually women hold most of the key roles in the various mage associations. Even I never expected to have a male disciple. Back when I attended the Magic Academy, 70% of the students were female. I don't think things have changed much. If you aim for the top spots, they'll be your fiercest competition. Great. Lith felt dejected. He wasn't the kind of man to discriminate, he despised humans regardless of their gender. What dispirited him was the idea of being once again on the losing side of life. Not rich, not talented, not handsome. I even managed to be of the fairer magical sex. Just splendid, he thought. There, there. Nana patted his head. Don't be depressed. History is full of very powerful male mages. It's the talent that matters the most, not the gender. One day you could even become a magus. Oh, yeah. I almost forgot, that was my second question. What's a magus? Chapter 28 True Magic. The magic community is like a separate society, and just like any society it has a clear hierarchy. First there is normal people. Anyone is capable of using chore magic, but their range barely reaches 2 meters, 2.2 yards, and are incapable of executing any complex task. They are not even considered people. Most mages refer to them as cattle. Then comes those like you, that can use all the 6 elements, can perform complex tasks with magic, but lack a proper magical education. They are referred to as magico, males, or magica, female, and are the real grassroots of the magical community, from which mages can expect a magically talented offspring. Even if it's considered uncommon, a magica can sometimes be accepted by a magic academy and become a full-fledged magician, like it happened to me. A magico usually becomes a medicine man in a village or city, depending on his talent. A magico becoming a magician is even more uncommon, but far from rare. Terms like mage, witch, sorceress, warlock are all just different words that identify someone that managed to enroll in a magic academy and complete the 5 years course necessary to be recognized as a true member of the magic community. At that point, one has just to follow his ambitions. You can become the personal mage of a noble, you enjoy life at court. Others choose to devote their whole life to study magic or create specific artifacts. As long as you don't do anything to contribute actively to the development of the kingdom or the mage association, you'll only remain just a mage, no matter how powerful you are or what you accomplish with your experiments. Remember, no mage can be forced to share his/her spells or discoveries in the magic field. Not even the king himself can openly violate this rule. But what you keep for yourself has no worth for society, hence it gives you no merits. Only by sharing your knowledge or by using it to perform tasks from which the kingdom or the magic association take great benefit, you can be elevated to the status of archmage. They are for the mages what dukes and marquises are for the nobles. And finally, there is the magus. A magus is someone whose power is equal only to his outstanding merits toward the community and the knowledge he shared with the magical association. A magus usually ensures to those who come after him a deeper understanding of magic, and the means to achieve better foundations than their predecessors. A magus is a king to mages, and a god to men. Very rarely there has been more than one. Whenever any country has 2 or more magi, it's considered to be in its golden age. Everything becomes possible. Lith was far from impressed. Basically, is just a fancy title that some old fogey forces on you after milking you dry. I don't know if by becoming a magus I would feel just sad or simply lose all my self-respect. You insolent whelp. Nana was outraged by such disrespect. Without magi like Lakra and their legacies, people like me would never get the chance to pass the entrance exam of any academy, no matter how small or insignificant. It would remain a privilege for those with an outstanding talent, or that come from noble or magic families. Simply by writing that book, she willingly sacrificed a great advantage she had over all the rest of her peers. I see it differently, Master. In my opinion, you do have an outstanding talent. If in the past even those gifted like you wouldn't be accepted, in the long term this would have led the magical community to dwindle, if not to completely disappear. Being born in a wealthy or talented family only gives you more resources and schooling, but the talent is decided at birth. Hence Lakra must have written that book not out the goodness of her heart, but to correct a dangerous flaw in the magical community. It's true that magic allows to beat quantity with quality, but there is still strength in numbers. Without people like you, maybe even like me, there wouldn't be enough new blood, and magic would sooner or later disappear. This is the reason why I can't see her book as a gift. She needed us, and badly. Nana opened her mouth to rebuke Lith, but stopped halfway. She pondered a while before speaking again. Damn it, Lith, whatever your mother fed you with as a baby, I wish I had it too when I had your age. I never looked at it from this perspective, yet I can already sense enough truth behind your words to not dismiss them as child babble. She sighed deeply with regret. I wish I was so profound back in my days. I would have avoided so many stupid mistakes. Yeah, sure. Lith thought. A over 30 years old man that comes from Earth and is not able to see that much would be a complete idiot. Scholarship here or on Earth are the same. Either a way for the rich to get rid of some of their sense of guilt for being filthy rich, or the manifestation of their fears. The fear of not having a doctor, a lawyer, or any professional help when they need it. If just having an offspring would suffice for their needs, they would have closed the schools centuries ago. The door of Nana's waiting room opened, the first client of the day had arrived. Time to make some money. Do you have any other questions from the forward? She tried being sarcastic, but was still dwelling on Litha's words, so she lacked the proper tone. Only one. I may need to take notes. Is there anything I could use to write? But of course. After confirming that the woman and child that just entered the waiting room simply needed a medical check, Nana asked them politely to wait for a minute or two. Nana and Lith got back to her study room, where she gave him a big, thick book with a red hardcover. Its pages were completely blank. This will be your first grimoire. Treasure it dearly. Paper is rare and expensive by nature. It's sold by weight, and it's more precious than silver. Lith was stunned by such news. The book was 27 centimeters, 10.7 inches, long, 17 centimeters, 6.7 inches, large and 3 centimeters, 1.2 inches, thick. It was huge. I. Lith stuttered for the second time in his new life. I don't know what to say. I can't believe you would do such a thing for me, it must have costed you a fortune. I'm deeply moved. A tear appeared on the back of his eyes. Oh. 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 So wise yet so naive. You bet I wouldn't. Money doesn't grow on trees. If it were for me, a few pages would have sufficed, little imp. The warmth in his heart died as quickly as it had appeared. Then who do I have to thank for it? Count Lark, who else? That noble is a magic enthusiast, he sent it to me as soon as he was informed of your apprenticeship. Now more studying and less flapping your gums. You are here to learn magic, not to chat. Nana left in a hurry, hoping to avoid her waiting room getting clogged up with patients. Lith sat back behind the desk and resumed reading. Most of the contents of Locker's book were old news to him. He had discovered them by himself through countless trial and error experiments. He could only sigh in regret. If only I had this book as soon as I was reborn. I wonder how powerful I would be today. Whenever Lith would find something noteworthy, he would write it down in his grimoire. Lith could not trust his bad handwriting, so he would dip his finger into the inkwell and then use water magic to spread the ink on the page, and then to dry it. The result was a whole page written with an outstanding calligraphy, even copying illustrations when necessary, in perfect English. All in just a second. Lith inwardly laughed. I don't need a secret code. I am the only one that speaks English in this world. My secrets are safe with my grimoire. They would be safe either way. Don't forget my pocket dimension. Solus chimed in. One more layer of protection never hurts. There is no such thing as too careful. Lith found the sections about fire, water, air, and earth quite bland. He already knew almost everything written in the book, but he read carefully every word. Nana allowed him to read only until lunchtime, then he was forced to go back home and resume his previous routine, switching the hunting time from morning to afternoon. It took him 3 days to get to the juicy part. Lith was aware that being a self-taught, light and dark magic were his weakest subjects. They were the only two elements that didn't exist on Earth, after all. He spent a whole week on the light and darkness section, taking countless notes and finally understanding how shallow and rough was his mastery over those elements. Amazing, simply amazing. It never ceases to impress me how profound is Locker's understanding of light and darkness. Her description of the mana flow in the patient's body is just peerless. I would have never thought of that on my own. Only now I finally understand why she wrote about them in the same section. Light and darkness are not separate elements, but two sides of the same coin. Darkness is of paramount importance for healing diseases and congenital conditions. Once I have fully absorbed all this new knowledge, I might even be able to cure Tista for good. If I really manage to do that, I will rethink my view about being a magus. Lith read that section again and again, until he became certain to have not missed anything. His magic power hadn't increased much, but his comprehension was now on another level for all the 6 elements. Lith was sure he would be able to achieve even stronger foundations, also improving his spirit and fusion magic. But with his confidence, also new doubts arose. The more I learn, the less it makes sense. How is it possible that with all this knowledge in her hands Nana didn't manage to cure Tista over the years? Why she needed both hand signs and a magic word to kill Baronet Trahan and his son? A finger snap should have sufficed. Lith decided to postpone those questions until he had fully understood Locker's book. Maybe he was missing some key element, or maybe it wasn't as easy as it appeared. Nana was delighted learning that he had finished the whole book in just a week, and immediately gave him his first Tier 1 magic spell book. Let's see if you are good at practicing magic as you are with its theory. Lith took the book from her hands, treating it like a precious gemstone that could easily break. He walked solemnly to his desk, opening the book full of anticipation. He would have never imagined to be disappointed to such an extent. What the effing FCK is this? Is this how a spell book is supposed to look like? By my core, what is the CR*P? Solus cursed for the first time in her life. Both Lith and Solus were too flabbergasted to make any further comment. So, they closed the book, reopened it again, discovering it was unchanged. They had expected for it to be filled with instructions about how to manipulate the mana flow in the mage's body, how to better connect with the world energy to obtain spells whose power was incomparable to those they already knew. Instead, all they found was an odd mix of a spelling book and a hand signs instruction manual. Not to mention that they already knew all of those Tier 1 spells, just with different names that Lith had invented over time. Blasting Sphere is just a fireball, piercing ice is identical to my frost lance, if not worse. Lith did go back to the foreword, noticing that this book had not been written by a magus, and was just a collection of the most common spells. By reading the instructions for Blasting Sphere, Lith noticed how the author stressed out the importance of executing the hand signs in the proper order with precise movements. Even the magic word was split into syllables, to help the student learn the correct pronunciation and accent. After skimming through the whole book, Lith couldn't find any mention of how to perform them with silence magic. Becoming more and more confused, Lith went to Nana for advice. "I'm sorry, Lith. I had forgot how frustrating and painful is going from the simple and easy silent chore magic to the much more complex real magic. Only Tier 0 magic can be silently cast. All the superior tiers of magic require both hand signs and proper spelling of the magic word." Litha's head was spinning so fast he had to sit down for a moment. This makes no sense at all, he thought. I use silent magic with my ice spears and fireballs all the time. I wouldn't be alive otherwise. Then a sudden thought erupted in his mind. Maybe I am special, after all. Maybe I use a different kind of magic because I came from Earth. Maybe I am some sort of chosen one. Lith was both scared and flattered at the idea. None of the above. Solus' words abruptly doused his enthusiasm. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Much appreciated. What's your explanation then? Lith could feel Solus's mind spinning so fast that it was hard for him to follow her reasoning. If my hypothesis is correct, then you, like Locra Silverwing and all the other past and present Magus, are one of the few people in this world to actually use true magic. Chapter 29 True Magic and Fake Magic. What do you mean with true magic? Lith said. At this point is still too early to tell. Of course, if you are too curious you can look at my mind right now, but I don't know how helpful could it be. Lith merged his mind with Solus, discovering she wasn't exaggerating at all. Her mind was full of ifs and buts, constantly examining facts, revisiting memories, making one speculation after the other before dismissing them. What can I do to help you? I need two things. First, all the books about the history of magic you can find. Second, we need to get out of here and do some experiments. I'll explain everything later. Lith went to Nana, asking her for help. Sure, I have a magic history book. But is not such an interesting topic, so I only purchased one covering the last couple hundred years. Is that enough for you? Can you please contact Count Lark and ask him if I can borrow some more from him? You sure are an oddball. First you beg me to teach you magic. I never begged. It's you who offered to teach me and I accepted. Nana pretended to not have heard anything and continued. And now that you get an opportunity to practice real magic, you want to bury yourself in history books. After pondering about what you told me and what Magus Locra wrote, I understood that I need to understand the past to comprehend the present and plan for the future. Lith improvised, digging up an old family motto. Makes sense, sort of. Nana conceded. I'll contact Lark via the communication amulet and see what I can do. The Count has one too? Lith asked in surprise. It's not some sort of secret or anything. Nobles, merchants, soldiers, no matter your background, as long as you can afford the price, you can get yourself one. Lith thanked Nana before returning to the study room. The book was very detailed, recording both historical turning points and lore. Lith didn't know what they were looking for exactly, so he read carefully, skimming only the parts about conflicts between countries or magic associations. Instead he focused on studying the life of influential mages, archmages, and magi. After spending a few hours researching the past, he had already found a recurring pattern in the rise of the magi. Some were recognized as geniuses at an early age. But most of them had started being considered mediocre at best, never achieving noteworthy results until at some point their talent simply skyrocketed. It usually happened between the 30 and the 40 years of age, well past their supposed prime, when the magical community had pretty much forgot about them. Of course, the author had no idea of what happened to cause such a turnaround, so he just presented the theories most popular at the time. Too bad that those paragraphs resembled more a work of fiction than history reports. According to some rumors, Magus Alista had married in secret the god of magic, while others claimed that she had found a mystical amulet from a lost civilization that was able to grant her unlimited mana. The same had allegedly happened to Magus Morgania and Frigic. An obscure start, followed by a sudden rise in power and glory, with no plausible explanation outside fairy tales and divine encounters. Could this be what Solus was looking for? Maybe what changed them wasn't some insane stroke of luck, but the discovery of the true magic Solus mentioned before. Lith was about to close the book, having ran out of magi, when Solus stopped him. Turn the page, please. Lith had no idea why, but did as instructed. By quickly reading through the page, he noticed it was about some disorders in a faraway place, during which several low-ranked mages had died. Solus had him flipping every page until the book ended. It was already lunchtime, so Lith started walking back home. Did you find anything important? Yes, I think so. I just need us to perform some experiments to put my theory to test. If I am right, once you experience the difference between fake and true magic, you'll be able to understand my reasoning. I hope that once you do, you can help me fill the holes I am unable to explain. Litha's mind and heart were in turmoil, the road seemed to stretch endlessly in front of him. Even when he sat around the table together with his family, he was unable to hide his unpleasant feelings. Damn it. Damn it all, the CR*P. First my real origin, then spirit magic, fusion magic, and now this? How many secrets do I have to keep to protect myself from this world, to protect my family from me? Couldn't I just find a magical hammer or something, granting me godlike powers? Or maybe just be handpicked by an ancient magician, to become the champion of order just by speaking one frigging word? Why does everything have to be so complicated? I really love my family, except for Tryon, but I can't be honest with them. At this rate, I will never have friends, a lover, anything. I will be forced to spend my life alone with my secrets. No. Not alone. Solas's voice resounded in his mind, full of kindness and affection. The tower core around Litha's neck pulsed, releasing gentle waves of mana that enveloped his body like a warm embrace. Litha's mood lightened a bit, allowing him to have a pleasant meal and conversation with his family, telling each other the respective day's work. After doing the dishes, he was finally able to leave home and go to the Tron Woods. Lith had his own special glade, deep in the woods. A place spacious enough to train his magical skills without endangering trees or wildlife, away from prying eyes. Lith and Solas double-checked their surroundings for intruders or magical beasts. Finding none, Lith could finally take out his grimoire from the pocket dimension and start memorizing the simplest Tier 1 spell he had found in Nana's book. We don't need something powerful or complex for our experiments. Only something to compare with your own spells. The faster you master it, the sooner we'll have our answers. Solas explained. The spell was Piercing Ice, a watered-down version of the Ice Spears spell that Lith used against huge opponents like the Ree or the Boars. Its magic word was Joranalita, with accents on the U for Jorana and the I for Lita. The hand signs required to start with the index's fingertips touching themselves, before pulling them away, drawing in the air a 7 with the right index while the left one had to execute mirrored movements at the same time. After that, the left hand had to stop, while the right index had to rotate, drawing a full circle before pointing at the target. The expected result was conjuring and shooting a giant ice shard against an enemy. Holy sh*T. And this is a simple one. So much effort for so little return. At his first try, Lith managed to conjure some kind of giant fork that traveled forward for a couple of meters, 2.2 yards, before crashing on the ground. You did not aspirate the H. Solas remarked. Then it came a boomerang that almost chopped his head off. It's Lita, not Lita. After a series of non-life-threatening failures, Lith had to admit he wasn't able to learn both the pronunciation of the magic word and the hand signs at the same time. So, he had to sit down and recite the spell until he got it right. After that, he had to face head-on his poor hand-eye coordination. That's not a 7, more like a 1. Do the second line steeper. You are supposed to draw a circle, not an egg. Will you stop your left hand during the last movement, please? Otherwise we'll never see the end of it. Failure after failure, Solas kept nagging in Litha's mind, correcting the many mistakes he did during each try. If you are so good, why don't you do it yourself? Lith rebutted, bursting with frustration. Sorry, I do not have a body. Not to mention I cannot perform any spell unless A, you first know how to do it and B, you give me the permission for it. It was a long afternoon for Lith, full of cursing, sweating, and casting, not necessarily in that order, before he finally managed to get Piercing Ice right. He kept repeating the spell until it became a second nature to him. I can't believe I had to work so hard for the simplest spell. I have barely an hour before the sunset. Hey, Solus, is it enough time, or do we wrap things up for today and go back home? Is more than enough. Tell me, how does it feel using magic that way? To be honest, it does not feel at all. I'm so focused on all that CR*P that I can barely breathe. Solus mentally nodded. Perfect. Now cast your ice spears spell, shooting only one spear. Lith was so tired to need to actually use the magic word. Jorun. With a flick of the wrist, Lith conjured a slender, sharp ice javelin that struck the nearest tree faster and harder than the piercing ice. Now focus, how did you do it? Lith couldn't understand all those apparently stupid questions, but he trusted Solus enough to know she wasn't just trying to piss him off. Like usual. First, I mentally visualized the effect of my spell, things like the shape of the spear, the trajectory, etc. Then I used my mana core to generate enough mana to support my spell, taking in account the size of the spear I wanted to conjure and how strong I wanted it to strike. Finally, I projected my mana on the outside, mixing it with the world energy to have access to the water element, and voila! Order up. Okay, now use piercing ice, again. This time do it slowly, try to feel how your mana flows according to the spell. Lith needed a few tries before succeeding in the task Solus had assigned him. The result was astonishing. What the heck? As soon as I start with the hand signs, a portion of my mana leaves my body. And there is more. The magic word determines how my mana interacts with the world energy, in this case the water element, while also giving the spell its shape and size. Lith could tell that if Solus had a face, now she would have had a smug grin from ear to ear. You are almost at the finishing line. Do piercing ice again, but try making the ice shard bigger. I can't. Lith was flabbergasted. If I try adding more mana, the spell becomes unstable and dissipates. Solus asked him to try generating a second ice shard, then to make the single shard faster, and finally to alter its trajectory right after it materialized. Litha's answer was always the same. I can't. The whole spell is set in stone. Once I learned the proper signs and pronunciation, I became nothing more than a mana source and a targeting system. My mana core and imagination play no part in this type of spell casting. Lith suddenly reached enlightenment. And that's why you consider it fake magic. Calling it fake magic is a little extreme, but for simplicity's sake let's call it that. Lith could sense Solus brimming with pride. Now I can finally share my theory with you. First of all, I'd like you to think back about all the steps necessary for you to use true magic. Solus paused for a moment, giving Lith time enough to think. What's your point? My point is that what you so casually dismiss as usual, is actually a really complex feat, much harder than fake magic. Sorry, I still can't follow you. Solus' mind snorted in frustration. True magic isn't as simple as you make it out to be. It requires to be aware of your own mana core and to be able to generate the right amount of mana for each and any spell. Too much mana and it would backfire on you, too little and it would not succeed. It also requires to be able to project your mana outwards, reaching out to the world energy by yourself. I doubt even Nana would be able to do that. Lith found that last part hard to believe. When you put it that way, sure, is not an easy feat but is what everyone does with chore magic. What's the difference between true and chore magic? Why no one else uses it? The difference is in the amount of mana required. Chore magic needs little mana, so you can use it even without activating your mana core, while true magic may require great amounts of mana, according to what are you trying to accomplish. Seeing as Lith was struggling, Solus started to use a monotone, lecturing tone. Chore magic is the very foundation for magic. It teaches you everything you need except how to activate the mana core. Fake magic is like a crutch, a foolproof magic for dummies spellcasting method. You only need to learn a few words and gestures and it does everything by itself, as long as you have enough mana. My hypothesis is that chore and fake magic are taught in this order as a training course towards true magic. But only few, like the Magi, understand that fake magic is not about finger movements and spelling words, is about perceiving the mana flow and learning how to control it. Your breathing exercises are a crutch as well, but a good one, since they helped you accessing the mana core, making you aware of the mana flow. Fake magic, instead, is a bad one, since it makes its users too reliant on its power. Most fake magic users are so obsessed by details like hand signs and pronunciation, that live their whole lives without noticing what lies beyond. Fake mages, especially those with great talent, become so complacent being able to do what no one else can, that they never stop for a moment to ask themselves why. Is kind of ironic. Lith was astonished. Everything made perfect sense. But if you had all this figured out, why didn't you tell me? What are those holes in your theory you mentioned earlier? Solus was embarrassed, but replied nonetheless. Because I can't answer some key points of my own theory. If I am right, why is fake magic the only one available for everyone? Why true mages kill whoever tries spreading it to the whole world? Say what? Solus merged their minds, showing to Lith all the things she had noticed reading the history book. How so many theorists and rising mages had all died in accidents or mysterious circumstances, often right after announcing to the magical community a groundbreaking discovery. Others, instead, would be dismissed as frauds, before going mad and disappear. Lith could only laugh his heart out. Oh, my! Solus, you are so smart and yet so naive in the ways of mankind. The answer is really simple. Do you know why back on Earth we had traffic jams? Because everyone could get a car. Would you really let any madman, any naive fool gets his hands on this kind of power? Fake magic is a mean to control the masses, it's not the final test like you think. After one discovers true magic, the final test is proving to be smart enough to silently join the club and reap the benefits. And if you don't like the club rules, the only way out is death. Chapter 30 True Magic and Fake Magic 2. When they finished comparing notes about Solus' explanation for true magic, it was already late. Lith had to rush to get out of the woods before it became too dark. He wasn't afraid of nighttime predators, his mother Alina, though, were another story. If I come back too late, I'll get grounded for weeks. Darn it all, I hate curfew so much. He did not want to come back home empty-handed, so he took out of the pocket dimension a couple of fat blinkers he had saved for moments like that. The next day, Nana informed Lith that the Count had agreed to help, and that some of his best books were on their way. Lith was forced to pretend being still engrossed in Nana's history book, it was too big to finish it in one go. He spent that day abridging all the Tier 1 spells on his grimoire, keeping only the name, hand signs, and pronunciation instructions and a short description for each spell. I don't need to waste precious pages on the CR*P. I can fake out the hand signs by moving my hands fast, but I still need to remember each new magic word when I pretend to use fake magic. Also, if Nana wants to put me to test, I need to show her my proficiency. Sigh, all this brainless memorizing will drive me crazy. The silver lining is that by learning this stuff I can predict an enemy's spell and counter it if necessary. More than once, Lith found himself wishing Solus could move his body at will. She had a much better memory, and it would save him a lot of time and effort. The only spell Lith was really eager to try was the air magic floating body. With this incantation one could make float in mid-air anything or anyone weighing less than 100 kilograms, 220.5 pounds. It had many uses, like breaking a free fall, moving a severely injured patient without bumps, or moving without leaving traces and making noises while hunting or on scouting. This was something that Lith had attempted many times on his own but with no success. He could easily make others float with spirit magic, but not himself. It was really hard balancing his whole body while focusing on the spell. The same could be said about using air magic instead of spirit magic. A minor mistake would make him float upside down or make him spin like in a washing machine. Lith never managed to float properly, let alone moving. If Solus is right and fake magic is a training course, I can use this floating body to learn how to float for good. Then, the most natural step is evolving it into a flight spell. I can't wait to soar through the skies like my childhood heroes. Right after lunch, Lith went back into the woods and started practicing. Floating body's magic word was Breza-Rilak, so he had no problems with pronunciation. The hand signs, instead, were quite complicated. Having learned from his mistakes, Lith first made sure he had got the magic word right before moving to the hand signs. He took it slow and easy. He didn't need to learn how to fast cast it, only to learn from the spell how to distribute the energy. After only a few tries, Lith managed to cast the floating body properly. It was an odd feeling, much different from what he had expected. To float it did not require a single strong updraft, but hundreds of them at the same time, each one pushing upwards with the same force to keep the balance in check. This is much worse than I had anticipated. No wonder I always failed in the past. Now, according to the book, floating body makes me weightless, standing in place. To move I need either external support or air chore magic. Lith started to generate weak winds, moving around like a toy drone. This feels great. This spell has countless applications. I wonder why it's just a tier 1 despite being so elaborate. Because it lasts only 1 minute, Solus reminded him while Lith was already falling to the ground. After experimenting with floating body a few times, Lith used his own mana flow to replicate the spell. Soon it became apparent that he wouldn't be able to do it in a single afternoon. True magic, after all, was really more difficult than its fake counterpart. Angry and frustrated, Lith started grumbling non-stop. It's all so annoying, having to learn 2 kinds of magic for every damn spell. I'm telling you, Solus, I have seriously considered using floating body instead. But if I am stupid enough to do so, then I would be forced to learn all its upper tier versions, and who knows at what step lies actual flight. This way, instead, once I get some solid foundations, everything else should come easy. Or at least I hope so. Lith spent all day and night practicing his new spell, levitation, but when morning came, he had yet to succeed. The following day, a small crate of books was delivered to Nana's house, and she promptly handed it to Lith. If they were mine, I would never allow you to bring them out of my house. But the Count explicitly told me you are free to bring them home as you see fit. Lark is a very generous man, don't abuse his trust. At first, Lith was really pissed off. He had completely forgot about his plea for help, and now he was flooded with useless books that he had to pretend to read. After 2 whole days as a shut-in, his body was craving for some action. But then he noticed that there weren't that many history books, most of them were biographies and autobiographies of past and present prominent mages, archmages, and magi. He finally had at hand the information he needed about how much talent he could reveal safely. Lith could finally see a light at the end of one of the many tunnels he was stuck in. So far, his apprenticeship had only added more problems to his life. Getting lucky for once made him feel really good. He took note in his grimoire of all the feats his role models accomplished and at what age they managed to do it. Then it came the most serious part, deciding how far to push his act. I'm of humble origins and with no backer. Mimicking a magus is like courting death. If even revealing less talent than Nana brought a noble to try to kill me, showing so much skill would put me on the hit list of all the major families. Agreed. Solus chimed in. The best choice is to keep being below Nana's talent. If Count Lark starts protecting you, you can ramp you up to her level. A male mage of that skill would definitely be noteworthy. From then, is better to adjust your power talent based on how things develop. My thoughts exactly. Lith mind nodded. During the following weeks, while at Nana's house, Lith and Solus split the tasks at hand. Lith crammed all the Tier 1 spells while Solus would read the Count's books and take note of every relevant detail. Lith gave her control over both spirit and water magic, making her possible to flip books and write an appendix on the grimoire. During the afternoon, instead, they would try to make levitation work. Little by little they were working out all the problems, sometimes even improving floating body foundations. Lith completed levitation after over a month of hard work, and by that time he had also already mastered all the Tier 1 spells, but he was forced to wait. According to the Count's books, that was a feat worthy of a future archmage. So, he had to wait for another half a month before revealing to Nana the fruits of his endeavors. She was truly impressed by Lith's skill and determination. Nana had told him that back in the day she had needed less than a month to memorize all the book, and despite Lith being of lesser talent, he had managed to accomplish the same result with just 2 weeks of delay. Nana had expected that it would take him no less than 2 whole months. Nana offered him to help her during the busy hours, and Lith gladly accepted. Until completing levitation he had not hunted for over a month. Not only the reserve of game he kept in the pocket dimension was almost depleted, but that huge break had also costed him a lot of money. Lith needed to make up for the lost time. Officially he only knew 2 Tier 1 light spells, Viniri Rad 2, the illness/injuries detecting spell, and Viniri Dan, a basic healing spell, capable to treat coughs, light colds and not too deep cuts. Hence, most of the times he would only get the diagnosis fee, since it would be Nana treating the patients. He could only get to heal minor injuries, yet his profits weren't that bad. Nana's business had deep roots, people from all the neighboring villages would come to seek her aid. By spending more time in the front office, Lith discovered that Nana was so much more than a healer for the people of Lucia. She was also their protector and the strongest law enforcer. Simply by living there, most bandits would avoid the village, and those who were brave enough to attack would quickly meet their maker before doing any real damage. Nana was also the shield for all the local merchants and population. No foreigner merchant, young master or young mistress could bully the people of Lucia without incurring in her wrath. Sometimes she would be called even to put an end to a drunken brawl. Lith found hard to believe she had such disposition toward the people she served, always standing ready to intervene whenever was necessary. One day, after Nana taught a lesson to a young noble and his bodyguards, believing that he could forcefully take any maiden that suited his taste, Lith decided to find out the truth. The old hag had already proven that she cared about money more than everything. Lith had fallen for her kind act more than once, so he wanted to know what her real angle was. Being rude to his mentor was definitely a bad idea, so he went with a subtler approach. "Master, I really don't know how to express my admiration for you. Taking care of the safety of the village, basically all by yourself, and asking nothing in return. It's really impressive of you." Nana laughed out loud, sounding ominous like the plumber, back on Earth, that once Lith had been forced to call during a national holiday. "You really are hilarious, kid. Sometimes you are so wise I almost forget you are just 6 years old. But whenever you come out with this nonsense, you really look like a naive child. Of course I get something in return. Have you ever wondered why my treatments are so expensive?" Chapter 31 Kindness and Retribution. Actually, yes. Many times. But I always thought those were the normal fares for a healer. In the moment he said it out loud, Lith remembered how ignorant he was in the ways of the New World. "They are not." Nana shook her head. "Listen, little imp, in a few years you are going to get out of this village and face the world. Not everyone is kind as your parents, and most nobles are not like Count Lark. For the average person life is hard, most of the time unfair, and hard work means nothing without luck and opportunity. I don't tell you this because I want to scare you, only because I don't want you to make my same mistakes. You need to wise up, So let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, a mage fallen from grace decided to return to her old village, to settle in and forget about her failures. At first, people were scared of her, thinking she would abuse her power and authority to settle old feuds. But the mage was too tired and bitter for petty revenges, she only wanted peace. So, when she became a medicine woman, doing nothing but tending to the ill and wounded for a fair price, the villagers were really happy. And when they noticed that since her arrival brigands, merchants, and nobles treated the village with much more respect, they became ecstatic. But bad things kept happening from time to time, since the mage had no interest in playing hero. So, the people in the village offered her a deal. They would pay her a certain sum in exchange for her help. Everything was perfect, and everyone was happy for a while. Then, the villagers, the only ones whom benefited from her protection, decided to make a little change to the initial deal. Sure, peace and quiet were doing wonders for business, and the presence of the mage brought so many people from the neighboring villages to get treatment, but that sum each year was a burden to their profits. Not even the fact that the county's most important noble had made the village the permanent seat for the local spring festival was enough to satiate their greed. So, they decided to convince the local farmers that it was in their best interest to help the villagers cover the sum they had agreed to pay to the mage. You may ask, how did they manage to do it? Well, let's just say not appealing to the goodness of their hearts. They simply threatened the farmers to change the exchange rate of their goods to the point of making their life a living nightmare. And what could the farmers do about it? Nothing. They needed the blacksmith for their tools, the merchant to buy and sell cattle and crops. You can easily imagine the rest. Without the villagers, the farmers were cut off from the rest of the county. By refusing, every single farmer would have to travel for days, each year, even to buy a new plow. Not to mention how hard and perilous would it be moving the cattle and the crops to the nearest merchant, all while leaving family and fields unattended. Lith nodded, a ferocious expression on his face. Let me guess. According to the new deal, every time the farmers needed the help of the mage, they would pay a share of the agreed sum. Just like everyone else. When Nana had finished her story, she could read the rage and disgust in the eyes of her disciple. There, Lith. I didn't mean to make you angry, the purpose was to show you what normal people, even good people, do to each other on daily basis. We are good friends and all, but that is until our pockets or families get involved, then one's own priorities come first. Life is hard for everyone, but for mages is even worst. Normal people see them as monsters, nobles as something to submit or exploit. But the worst comes always from your own. Even in the magical academy you will find hidden ranks, hierarchy, and the competition will be tougher than you can imagine. The pressure both families and teachers put on those poor kids quickly turns them into ferocious beasts. They get measured, judged, and looked down upon for every mistake they make. Social status, wealth, talent, the more they have the higher the expectations for them. Lith was starting to get confused. So, do you want me to go easy on them? To don't judge hastily? To try making friends rather than enemies? He was inwardly scoffing. Gods forbid it. The very opposite. Nana yelled in desperation, flapping her arms like a hysterical bird. I already told you, you need to wise up. Don't fall for the first nice act someone performs. How do you think they will treat a dirty poor country bumpkin? How do you think they treated me? At first you will easily make friends with the students from the lower classes, but as soon you'll reveal any talent, you'll be surrounded by only two kind of people. Those who want to destroy you and those who want to suck up on you. Stay away from the former, and ever further from the latter, otherwise you'll end up like me. Naively believing to have lots of important friends, until you make one single mistake, and then they pile up on you like everyone else, leaving only scorched earth around you. When she finished talking, Nana looked really tired and bitter, staring at the floor with watery eyes, She seemed to have aged about 20 years. Lith pondered for a while on her words, before giving her his answer. I appreciate the thought and will treasure your words forever. But I also hope you'll understand that your story kind of pissed me off big time. So, here is my plan for the immediate future. When Nana finished listening to Litha's idea, she laughed heartily, going back to her old snarky self. That's what I am talking about. Good boy. I'm finally starting to rub some good sense on you. You have my permission, but do it only in my absence. It would be bad for my revenue otherwise. If anyone complains or tries to do something funny, I'll cover for you. In the following months, Lith had to prove time and time again his magical skills as a healer, before Nana gave him a Tier 2 spellbook to learn from. This allowed him to expand his official skill set and be recognized by the people of Lucia as a true healer. Lith was finally able to enact his plan. Nana wasn't always at her home office. Sometimes she had personal business to attend to, but most of the times it was because she had to do house calls for patients that cannot be moved. During those times, Lith was in charge of everything. Those who could afford to, would wait for Nana to return. Lith was still 6-year-old after all. He didn't seem trustworthy enough to put someone's life in his hands without Nana's supervision. But emergencies couldn't be planned, so there was always someone desperate enough to come for his help. His first real patient ended up to be Luca, Rozelle's youngest brother, see Chap 21. He was just a toddler, so his mother, Lisa, had a terrified expression when she brought him in. Luca was crying desperately, his left arm purple and swollen, bent in an unnatural angle. Lith hadn't even finished pulling the curtain to give them some privacy, that Lisa laid Luca on the bed and started to beg for Litha's help. It's all my fault, I'm so stupid. I was cradling him in my arms, while preparing lunch, when he started squirming and fell. Can you please help my baby? Lith quickly waved his fingers into a binary rad 2. A small wisp of light danced around the baby before penetrating his chest. The light spreaded to all his body, becoming dimmer around his chest and left arm. Immediately after, Lith faked a binary locket. Guided by his willpower, the light magic first dulled the pain, then it made the bone fragments reattach themselves to the rib cage and the arm. Lith used his invigoration breathing technique on the baby, using the imaging it provided him to make sure that the bones were perfectly healed and aligned before interrupting the spell. He had a broken arm and cracked ribs, but now is as good as new. Luca was still crying, but now he was moving both arms, his skin pink and with no traces of bruises. Lisa sighed in relief, thanking Lith with a deep bow before handing him the money. It was Nana's usual fare, 4 copper coins. Enough for a family of 4 to eat well for one day. Lith took only 2, what she would have paid without the village protection tax. Seeing that she was confused, Lith whispered. I know about the deal with the villagers, and I am not Nana. I protect no one. Also, us farmers need to stick together, am I right? Please, keep your lips sealed about it, otherwise the next time I will be forced to ask you for the full price. Lisa was shocked, her eyes watery. She did not know what to say. Then can I ask you to check my leg too? It hurts from a while, and the pain is not getting any better over time. Is that how the little Luca managed to slip away? Lith asked. Yes. A few weeks ago, I took a bad fall while repairing a hole in the roof. At first it didn't hurt much, and with a baby we could not afford a visit for every small thing. Lith used invigoration again, using the injury detection spell as a cover. Holy CR*AP, her leg is badly cracked. It's a miracle she was still able to walk without a limp. After healing her, Lith was conflicted about taking the rest of the money. He could see Alina in her, all the sacrifices his family had made just for keeping Tista alive were always vivid in his memory. Lith couldn't avoid empathizing with the daily struggles his neighbors had to face every day, perceiving them as real persons, like him, instead of dismissing them as trash, like he always did with those he killed in the past. Luckily Lisa took the choice for him, handing the money and opening the curtain before he could say a word. What a proud woman, truly deserving my respect. Next time she comes, I'll perform the healing while checking up the wound, so she won't get to pay. Those 4 copper coins were the heaviest Litha's hand had ever held. Lisa's family would have to skip a meal or 2 to cover for that expense. From that day onward, Lith would do the same thing for all the farmers, always prompting them to silence. Soon his reputation grew wildly outside the village's borders. Inside those same borders, though, things were quite different. On another occasion, when Nana had been called away, another kind of patient walked in. It was Rankin, merchant and richest man in the village, barging in while carrying his son on a makeshift stretcher, with the help of one of his assistants. Nana. Where in the 9 hells is that wretched healer when you really need her? She is away at the moment. Lith moved forward, making way for the stretcher. The boy was around 15 years old, his black hair stood out on his pale face. He was bleeding from his leg, despite the wound was tightly wrapped up. Where is she? Rankin yelled. The men repairing the Colon Bridge had an accident, she will be back on the afternoon at best. You idiot, can't you see my son is dying? I do not have that much time. Lith snorted in annoyance. If you have to yell and be rude, that's the door. If you want me to take care of him. Lith extended his right hand, while pointing with the left at a sign on the wall that said, "Payment up front. No refunds. Paying you. What are you, 4? Almost 6.5. Again, if you aren't going to pay, make space for real clients. If you want miracles, feel free to pray. But do it outside." Litha's tone was stone cold. Okay. Rankin gave up. Here is you goddamned 4 copper coins. 8. Lith stopped him before he could take the money out of his pouch. That's clearly a deep wound, requiring 2 tier 2 spells, if not even a tier 3. Either way the price is set to 8 copper coins. Lith pointed to another sign, stating the prices. Check up, 1 copper coin. Tier 1 spells, plus 1 cubic centimeter tier 2 spells, plus 3 cubic centimeters tier 3 spells, plus 7 cc. But those are Nana's prices. You are not Nana. Really? Lith mimicked his master's snarky tone. What gave me away? The age? The height? The gender? You are really perceptive, worthy of a merchant. Rankin was choking on his own anger. Such an arrogant little brat. I meant that you shouldn't ask so much. Didn't your master tell you about our agreement? Lith just pointed to the end of the second sign, where no discounts, ever was written in big bright red words. Don't you have a heart? How can you ask so much? You are so young and inexperienced, after all. In all his years as a merchant, Rankin was proud to have never overpaid any product. He was determined to get a discount at all costs. I could argue that I don't think you ever gave a discount to someone just for pointing out your age or likability. Also, which one of us is bargaining on his son's life? I doubt all healing magic in the world would do him any good once he bleeds out. Finally remembering about his beloved Garth, Rankin finally paid the fee, letting Lith do his job. What happened? Lith asked after using Vinary Rad 2 coupled with invigoration, sensing a deep cut wound that missed the femoral artery by an inch. This blockhead and his idiotic best friend had the brilliant idea of practicing their swordsmanship with real swords. That's what happened. He lost a lot of blood. Lith said after completely healing the leg. Keep him at rest and make him eat rare meat. Later, that day, when Rankin returned to complain to Nana about her disciple, she laughed hard in his face for a whole minute, before shutting her door in his face. Part 3 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.